A new set brings new challenges, and for R&D, that means cards and choices we've never seen before. Let's take a look at the new mechanics in Born of the Gods.
We knew we wanted a mechanic that somehow, if tapped creatures were asleep, that we wanted a mechanic that worked when things were tapped somehow. So the first idea we had was literally activated abilities you could only use if the creature was tapped. But we found some problems with that, because what we found is we didn't want you using the ability multiple times. So it wasn't like I attack and now I can use it multiple times. We wanted to use it once. So then we toyed with the idea of, well, what if I can only use it when I'm tapped, but part of using it untaps me? And then someone said, hey, isn't that a lot like the untap symbol from Shadowmoor? And we had done this, the untap symbol, but it hadn't gone over, it confused a lot of people, it didn't go over that well. So we're like, well, we didn't want to use the untap symbol. And then we came up with the idea of, well, what if it's triggered? When it untaps, it triggers. So you have to get it tapped, and then when it gets untapped, that's when it triggers and it happens.
So Inspired is a new ability word in Born of the Gods. It's found in front of abilities that trigger whenever a creature becomes untapped. Now, this could be at the start of your turn because you attacked with it last turn or became tapped in some other way, but also anytime you untap it with a spell or ability. For example, Crypsis is an instant you'll find that can untap a creature. If it has any Inspired abilities, those will trigger right away.
The reason I really enjoy Inspired as a mechanic is that it changes how you approach the game. It doesn't look like it's an aggressive mechanic, but it is. The primary way that you will get to untap your creature is because you attacked with it the previous turn. That being said, there are plenty of combo tricks and Johnny cards and little combinations that you can do to get your creature tapped without having to put it in danger.
When we get handed a mechanic like Inspired, there are two things that we have to make sure happen. One thing is that building around it is satisfying. So if you end up with an Inspired deck, it works. The other thing that we have to make sure is that there are individual exciting cards that get you to think about trying that, and that get you some of the fun of the mechanic, even if you're not willing to sign up for the whole package. So that's why there are things like Painseer in the set. That is a card that, even if you're not in for playing with your Springleaf Drum to tap your Inspired guy and build a little Rube Goldberg machine, you probably still like drawing extra cards, so maybe you'll think about playing this guy.
My favorite Inspired cards are the ones that have a cost to the trigger, so that if you want to take advantage of the Inspired ability, you have to invest some mana into it, because it's happening at your untap step, usually, before you draw, you have to make some predictions about the rest of your turn. And frequently, the cost is high for an effect that's not generally going to be as powerful as what's on a printed card. So are you going to pay 4 mana for something that's not really worth a full card but doesn't cost you a card, or are you going to spend that 4 mana on a much more impactful play from your hand?
There are often deck building puzzles to solve, that's why you have things like Springleaf Drum in the set, but if you play something like a Kragma Butcher, you might make different decisions so that you can get it attacked, and then you can get an ability. And if it's something like Kragma Butcher, then you're looking at, well, if it's bigger for this turn, now that it's 4 power instead of 2, maybe I can attack with it again. If you're looking at some of the token makers, you're like, what do I need to do to get a token made? And so you get an advantage once by doing that, but in all of those cases, you're making different tactical decisions because of the cards after you play it, not so much in the deck building phase. And it's just in such a different axis from the rest of the things going on in the set that I find that to be a lot of fun.
It is more difficult to design to a set with an unusual mechanic like Inspired. If you're designing sort of regular Magic set, a lot of it is sort of paint by numbers. What do we need? We need a naturalized variant. We need to make it a naturalized variant. Whereas when something is a bit weird, you have to think about what are the implications of that. How are we going to support this mechanic and make it fun to play with? And that's really where the hard work comes in.
Tribute is a new keyword ability in Born of the Gods. So now, when a creature with Tribute is entering the battlefield, you first have to choose an opponent. Now, this is not in response to the spell. So I cast my, let's say Siren of the Fanged Coast is a good example. It's 1/1 creature, Tribute 3. So when I cast the spell, nothing happens yet. I haven't chosen an opponent to decide whether to pay tribute or not. This is especially important in multiplayer games. No one knows. It also has an ability that triggers if an opponent doesn't pay tribute. No one really knows what I'm going to target with that yet. Now, when that spell resolves, Siren of the Fanged Coast, it's about to enter the battlefield. This is where the fun happens. First, I choose an opponent. That opponent can pay tribute or not. So now tribute will have a number. Siren of the Fanged Coast has tribute 3. The opponent makes a choice. Either the creature gets that many counters before it enters the battlefield. So in this case, if the opponent pays tribute, it's going to enter as a 4/4 creature. If the opponent decides to not pay tribute, there'll usually be a consequence for that. In this case, Siren's last ability will trigger. You'll then choose a target for that ability.
Tribute came out of what we call pre-design, which is a sort of small team that assembles and does blue sky design to like think of wacky ideas, and most of them get thrown out, but it's a little less pressure in pre-design. Billy Moreno was one of the developers here, came up with the idea for Tribute. We thought that we needed to reduce the number of old mechanics as we introduced new mechanics, and Tribute seemed like a cool thing that giant monsters could do in lieu of monstrosity.
Tribute involved a lot of math, a lot of number crunching, a lot of iteration, because the decision rests not with you, the caster of the card, but with your opponent. We had to make sure that either choice your opponent made was good for you. It's your card. We want you to play with it and be happy with it. So every choice your opponent makes has to be wrong for them.
So Fanatic of Xenagos is a card with tribute that can put the opponent to a real test of their math skills. When you're looking at whether or not you're going to be getting a 3/3 haste or a 4/4 without haste, you really have to do some math about how much damage you're expecting to take from this creature over the course of the game. What tools do you have in your hand that can deal with this creature? Do you have tools that can deal with 3 toughness but not 4? These are the types of things that you have to start adding up in your head to figure out whether or not you're going to pay that tribute or not.
So my favorite tribute card in the set is Oracle of Bones, because of the dynamic of your opponent doesn't actually know the danger of the choice. Either you're going to have a 5/3 haste creature, which is known, or you get to cast any instant or sorcery in your hand, and that's an unknown.
Probably the most interesting thing about Tribute from my perspective that happened during development is that we had a multiplayer playtest team that was active during the time of Born of the Gods, and their feedback on Tribute was very interesting. The way that it was originally set up, any player at the table, if you were playing a multiplayer game, could choose to put the counters on your thing, and then you wouldn't get the cool enters the battlefield ability, you would just get a bigger guy. And in free-for-all multiplayer, that almost always happened. So what they came back with was, we want to get the cool thing more often. So now it's extremely political. When I play a Tribute guy, I get to pick who at the table is going to make the decision. And if you have something that my guy who kills an artifact or enchantment wants to kill, then that guy over there probably wants to see it dead too, so I ask him, hey, can I go kill that? And he says, yes, and then your thing dies.
It's interesting to try and read what's going on with your opponent's hand based on the choices they make with Tribute. So that's something you can get some extra information from if you're paying attention, that, oh, based on that Tribute choice, I can make some assumptions about what this player is prepared to deal with.
I'm going to make you suffer. You're going to have to choose your own fate. How do you want to die? Do you want a giant creature or slightly smaller creature that's going to do something bad to you? Which would you prefer?
Each new set needs new mechanics, but Magic fans, well, we want more. More creatures, more spells, more planeswalkers, more choices, more everything. In Part 3, we'll see how R&D goes about making Born of the Gods a set where every card counts.